Live from Seattle, 8:20 a.m., The Word.
News and Views Thursday.
Well, on this News and Views Thursday, a federal judge in San Francisco has blocked a Trump administration order. The order was to withhold, this blockage was to withhold funding, or rather the order is to withhold funding from communities that limit cooperation with U.S. immigration authorities. So this district judge issued a temporary ruling just this week in a lawsuit, and it was about the executive orders targeting these sanctuary cities. The decision will stay in place while the lawsuit moves through court. President Trump, not surprised.
I'm never surprised by the Ninth Circuit. As I said, we'll see him in the Supreme Court.
We'll see him in the Supreme Court. Well, how's that going to work? We're going to be talking about this and other issues where illegals. Now, I get that idea that people aren't illegal. People aren't illegal. Well, and you can say that, and I get that. People are precious. People are precious, but their actions are. And that's something we need to look through. There have been many laws, immigration laws, that have been thwarted to help people that are here illegally, from lawyers, judges, educators. A massive anti-deportation infrastructure has emerged to try to protect illegal immigrants from Trump's crackdown. Advocacy groups are coaching potential deportees on how to massage encounters with police. Lawyers and judges are working to shield them from charges that would make them priorities for deportation. And, you know, there's some compassion there. But what about the legal issues? And what about this ruling? We invited our favorite attorney, Byron Henry. He's a Dallas-Fort Worth attorney. He's a constitutional scholar, and he's one of our favorites. Byron Henry, good to have you again.
Great to be with you, Michelle.
Well, we seem to be in this place, and we've talked about this before, where judges are not necessarily there to interpret the law or to stand for the. They're there to kind of rewrite the law. They're there to put in their own thoughts and opinions, to legislate from the bench. Is this an issue dealing with this? The San Francisco judge, is that possibly a case of bench legislation?
Well, certainly, Michelle, we've seen it over and over again on the Supreme Court and other courts where a lot of people on the right, especially conservatives, believe that judges are both basically purporting to interpret the law in wrong, through their ideological lens, so to speak, and so it actually turns into more judges making policy preferences in the guise of interpreting law than actually interpreting the law for them. And with Trump's travel ban, I thought the court went way out of its way to enjoin the temporary travel ban, way outside the bounds of the precedent that was available, especially since it really centered on national security and immigration, which is basically congressional, the job of the Congress and the president to enforce. But in this case, there is at least some underpinnings to this decision, and it basically relies on the fact that the federal government doesn't have authority to tell the state governments how to run their own government, which is a conservative separation of powers principle.
Now, I get that. I'm gonna intervene here because I get that. I agree with that. Man, if the federal government says you must do this, and we as a people of Washington State or whatever state say, yeah, I don't think that's right, we don't agree with that, that's what a free society does. And we say, yeah, we're not going to participate. Okay, cool. But isn't it fair for the federal government to say, okay, you don't want to abide by these policies, you're right, go ahead, we're not going to war with you, but you're not going to get these federal funds because of that?
Well, that's the difference here. And what I think a lot of people are missing is that when Congress allocates money to states directly with no conditions and says the state of Texas is entitled to this much in highway funds or this much in law enforcement funds, the president really doesn't have the authority. He may talk about it, but he doesn't have the authority to add conditions or change the law. A lot of conservatives and Republicans were upset that President Obama was basically not enforcing immigration law, but changing the law, so to speak. well, President Trump can't do this either. But there's a difference here, and here's the difference. President Trump and the Justice Department have a lot of discretion with these congressional funds. And with all the funds they have discretion over, including grants and applications, they have to choose who receives these funds. And there's certainly nothing unconstitutional about money that Congress has given to the president or the attorney general to have discretion over for grant purposes in saying, we're not going to award a law enforcement grant to a city that refuses to cooperate with or enforce federal law. There's certainly nothing unreasonable or unconstitutional. I think that goes to your point, is certainly federal law enforcement can condition their funds to go into cities that actually help them and enforce federal law. And that's where I think the judge may have it wrong in saying that the president can't withhold any funds from these cities. In fact, the president and the attorney general can withhold funds as long as Congress has given them the right and discretion over the funds.
Now, this is not a legal comment. This is more of an ideological comment that some of the same people that are applauding this judge are the kind of people that are saying, you know, a little private Christian school that wants to teach intelligent design and Christian values and maybe have kids memorize Bible verses shouldn't get funding, because that's just not how we do it with like public education. So it seems to be a little bit of hypocrisy there.
Well, it's hypocrisy on two levels. First, you're exactly right. And earlier last week, there was actually a case argued where there is the government in Missouri and groups on the left are arguing that a church cannot participate on the same level as other nonprofits to get state funding to upgrade their playgrounds for children's safety, because that church obviously is a church school because they're religious. So first of all, it's hypocrisy in that respect. But there's even a different hypocrisy. These same people, when the Supreme Court ruled in the Obamacare case that the feds can't condition funding because of the separation of powers and can't coerce states into cooperating with the federal government, everybody on the left said that was a terrible decision, that this is a conservative states' rights decision, and that's wrong. Well, now, when President Trump is doing the exact same thing from the federal level, people on the left are saying, yes, stop President Trump, states' rights. You can't force states to cooperate. So it's almost like the roles have been reversed in this case, and all the people that are against states' rights when the president is liberal are for states' rights when the president is conservative.
It goes back to something we said earlier in the program. What you think, what you believe, and what you want to enforce is just fine as long as it works for me. It's part of our selfie generation, isn't it?
That's exactly right. It's just funny to see the players on both sides of this argument, because most of the players that are arguing in favor of the San Francisco judge and against President Trump would never take the position that the federal government can't condition funds. In fact, President Obama and his different agencies at the federal government conditioned funding across the board to states, trying to coerce them to take part in Obamacare, the Clean Power Plan, all the different liberal programs that President Obama and the left wanted to
even the bathroom issue, even the bathroom issue with schools.
That's right. That's right. They tried to condition education funding on agreeing with the federal government and coercing the state into complying with their version of gender roles and gender equality. And of course, the roles are reversed now that there's a Republican in the White House, and he's attempting to coerce states and cities. And the liberal cities are pushing back, saying no, states' rights, states' rights.
And that's why the truth and law are important, because they don't change no matter who's in the White House. Wow. I'm going to ask you one final question dealing with this specific issue with the immigration and this crackdown from the White House, of course, if you're just joining us, on immigration, on sanctuary cities and funding. Well, a judge from the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco blocked the Trump administration's order. Where is it now? Where does it stand now? And do you think it's going to go to the Supreme Court?
Well, first, it's just a temporary ruling, so it's very early in the procedure. There's multiple levels before we actually get to the Court of Appeals, and then we get possibly to the Supreme Court. So certainly it has the potential to go to the Supreme Court, although I must say that it wouldn't reach it this term, so we'd be looking at an October 2017 term where the case would actually get there. It might not even get there by then, because of the Ninth Circuit will have to weigh in. But I suspect this is going to play out in practice. In a lot of ways, the executive order, and I don't want to diminish it too much, but was symbolic. But first, it attempts to do as much as President Trump is allowed to do under the law. And if a court says he can't do quite that much, then so be it. But it also serves notice that the federal government is going to be looking, and the Attorney General, at every possible way to insist that states and cities enforce federal immigration law and cooperate with the Fed. This is just one way of doing that. So I do think it is very much more than symbolic. It is a signal to all of the cities that, as you were talking about in the lead-in, have decided that they would create these safe harbors for illegal aliens and teach people how to remain in the country illegally against federal law and not participate or cooperate with the federal government. It basically serves notice that if you're not going to cooperate with us, there are going to be consequences. And I think that is a good thing, and I think it is something that the Trump administration can continue, and there's nothing illegal or unconstitutional about an administration basically doubling down on the enforcement of the rule of law, especially immigration law.
Well, and if you don't like that, then you change it by legislation, not by legislating from the bench. Byron Henry, such a joy always to talk with you. You could go to solidcounsel.com if you'd like some more information. Byron Henry, he is a constitutional scholar and one of our favorite folks to have on Live from Seattle. Thank you.
Anytime.